And we are
Welcome
live.
everybody to the Contrarian Daily. My name is Jake Julius. This is Chris Jong, and we are talking today about more updates with Ukraine and Russia and the situation that's going on over there. We're going to be talking about some of the things that have happened today and more updates since last night. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the history of the last 25 years or so and why this domino has fallen and why we should be really keeping an eye on the next domino to fall and what they may be and what's come before this. Another thing I want to highlight today is the fact that Russia is in fact an energy superpower of the world, how that happened, why that's also really important, and then what potential implications that could have down the line. So just to start it off, a few sanctions that was announced today by Joe Biden and other world leaders, including barring Russia's 4 largest banks from access to the international banking system.
SWIFT, right?
They weren't barred from the SWIFT. They weren't barred from
SWIFT.
No, not yet. That's might be to come, but it hasn't happened just yet.
Yep.
Freezing Russia's assets, some Russian assets in the US. Expansion of sanctions against Russian oligarchs overseas. NATO is planning a summit on Friday. I believe that means that it'll be tonight Australia time, Friday American time, I believe. The US plans to move NATO troops into NATO allied countries across Europe, so probably the likes of Poland and Lithuania that are sort of on the border of Russia there. But there's no plan for direct invasion or direct action yet from US troops into Ukraine. So also, there's been a lot of sanctions being talked about on the part of European countries to Russia. And this is going to create a real can of worms because obviously Russia, and we'll talk about this more later, is a superpower in the world in terms of energy and their gas exportation. So they do have the ability to cripple other economies. If you look at Germany, is one of the biggest economies in the world, for example, and they get 50% of their gas from Russia. Germany's obviously a NATO allied country. So we need to be really keeping an eye on that situation as well, because the war of sanctions and war of resources is something that's probably going to be the first big thing to happen in this conflict. So watch your energy prices, watch your own gas prices. And I don't mean just people who drive cars. I mean every product that you can think of has to be driven to that place. So there's many more deeper implications of having gas prices increase. It'll increase the cost of everything. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Chris, and talk about some stuff that's happened today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know they were talking earlier about $5 a gallon in terms of petrol over in the USA, in terms of it hitting that level. Apparently, it's already at that level at some places in California. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I think I just want to second what you're saying there too. Every single resource and every single thing that we buy or sell that comes from a physical store has to get there by some sort of transport, truck, plane, boat, whatever it is. So then definitely the energy fuel will cause everything to go up. Hence, we've already seen the rhetoric out of the USA in terms of them talking about this causing inflation. Definitely a big issue there. But I do want to sort of show, we're going to go round 2. We're going to try to get some footage showing as well, because there's been a lot happening since our last stream. Was it less than 24 hours ago? It is definitely a full-scale invasion of the Ukraine. There's been confirmation of bombing and attacks in Kyiv as well, or Kiev, I believe. The Ukrainians, I believe, say Kyiv. We're obviously used to saying Kiev.
You say it however you'd like to say it, Chris.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sure they're not going to do too much, but I want to try to get it right for the guys over there too. But look, there's been a lot of updates. The civilians are actually arming themselves and been pushing back as well. So we're going to have some footage of that as well. So just bear in mind as well, guys, this is actual footage from the ground. Some of it might be a little bit distressing depending, again, on who you are as you watch this. So let's try to get this footage up and going for round 2. Last night, if you recall, we had a few issues with that. Now, let me just try this for round 2 here. Now, I'm going to take out my earphones so you guys can hear the audio. So this is actually, I don't know if you guys have heard of Snake Island, but this is an audio exchange between Ukrainians who are manning this island here. There was 13 Ukrainian soldiers who were stationed on this particular island before a Russian warship actually opened up. All 13 of them, unfortunately, had passed away. is the footage. So definitely rest in peace to these guys. Let's see if we can get the footage here playing. We'll get the ad out of the way, and then we'll get into it. All right, let's see if we can hear it. And now we're listening to the Ukrainians, saying this is it. Should I tell him to go F himself just in case? Ukraine's reply, Russian warship, go fuck yourself, is what they said. Now, this is also footage from the same people on the island. This is the last footage before the video ends. All right, so you can hear in that footage there the cannon from the warship opening fire, and that's the last footage that's known footage recorded from that particular island.
And how many casualties were there?
13. So 13 soldiers. You can see, for those of you who are watching, I believe this is going to go into audio as well, but for those of you who are watching, you can see all 13 soldiers are going to be allegedly awarded for heroism posthumously for their action. A simple act of defiance, guys, of just telling the Russian warship to go fuck themselves. Now that's, I don't know about you guys, but that's going to take some balls, that's for sure. Yeah.
They would have probably known that was it for them as well.
Well, that's it. Well, again, I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but there's a part there on the screen right now. The guy saying, "Look, this is it." They knew what was coming, and they decided to go down defiantly. Which, you got to respect that no matter which side you're on. We won't show this clip here, but this is essentially just some Russian soldiers. Actually, we'll hear this. Again, if you're listening to the audio, I'll do my best to try to explain what's happening after the clip. But for those of you who are here, let's listen to this. This is civilians in where are they? In Sumy, the city of Sumy, who've actually captured and are interrogating a Russian soldier.
Олег, зачем вы это делаете, Олег?
Приехал с Москвы, Олег.
So they're asking him, why were you sent here?
Вторглись в нашу страну. Мы не хотели.
Зачем вам говорили, вы сюда едете?
And he's apparently been telling them they're being sent there to gather people, right? And the camera person's replied back with, gather where, we don't want this war, which is obviously, it's full on.
Людей мирных забрать?
Людей. Мы не хотим войны, Олег.
Сумы.
Зачем ты тут?
Центр города.
And for those of you who can't see the screen as well, the soldier apparently replies back with, he doesn't know where they're meant to gather them, and they don't want the war either, apparently. What we'll also look at here is this is a massive explosion that happened over the city of Kiev, and the speculation is it's either a Russian airplane that's been shot out of the sky or one of their cruise missiles as well. This is the same explosion from multiple different angles. It's a big fireball there that's either the missile or the plane, and obviously all the stuff behind it's probably chaff, which is used to try to get rid of missiles as it's floating down to the ground. And we'll get this from a couple of different angles in this video here. I'll go ahead to another one. This is probably the best footage.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is over the city of Kiev.
Fuck.
All right, it's full on, and they're saying here they're getting mixed reports. It's either a Russian aircraft or the anti-air defense system hitting the cruise missile as well, which is full on. We've got there's footage here of captured soldiers from the Russian Air Assault Brigade. Apparently, according to the translation here, they don't even know why they're there. Again, that could just be what they've been told to say in case of capture. Again, you can come back and watch that video if you want to. Now, this is actually a firefight. Russian soldiers are opening up on this particular building here, which has civilians who are fighting back. This is not, from the reports here, this is not civilians who are, passive and, innocent, quote unquote innocent. These are civilians who actually are fighting back against the Russians.
I think that the Ukrainian government is arming citizens.
They have been, yes.
Like they even put out a report, like the Prime Minister even sent out a tweet saying that they're
Correct.
happy to arm citizens who want to fight the
They're
Russians.
giving away free guns. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I know over the last few weeks they've been training the civilian population for fighting, and that came through from, again, if you watch the video from last night, we showed the slides from the S2 underground. They've been covering this and tracking this very, very closely, and they've been saying they've been preparing for civil defense for the last few weeks in the Ukraine. And I believe martial law has been imposed, so no military-age males can leave the Ukraine. And you're right, they're actually giving them free guns to defend themselves. So this is footage of apparently Russian soldiers shooting at the building where the civilians are located. We don't see any return fire, but let me actually go full screen too, guys, so you guys can hopefully get the best footage of this. So you'll see the tracers coming into the building. So there's one, and then you'll watch a bit more coming in now as well. And again, it's full on. The footage is coming in here. Like this is full on stuff that you're seeing. Whether there's people being hit inside there, you just don't know. But this is civilian soldiers or civilians who are opening up on the Russians. Now, this last clip will show, before we go back to you, Jay, because I know you've got a lot to say. We can come back to more footage later. But this is Ukrainian civilians who are vowing to defend themselves, and they're calling on others to join them as well, guys. So
Wow.
again, this. I don't know, for me, I just can't help but respect people like this who are willing to lay down their lives to defend. Again, no matter which side you fall on. And again, I feel sorry for the Russians involved. I feel sorry for the Ukrainians involved. This is a terrible situation for the people. And yeah, just listen to this, and I'll give you the translation as well after.
Ви представники організації «Національний спротив». Ми сьогодні стали на захист української вітчизни та нашої столиці. Жодна проросійська мерзота не зайде в Київ, а якщо зайде, вона буде знищена. І нехай ми прольємо всю власну кров, ця кров буде віддана за нашу батьківщину у боротьбі з російським окупантом. Ми закликаємо кожного з вас зараз взяти в руки зброю. Незалежно, ви перебуваєте в ще проукраїнських містах, чи ви вже перебуваєте під окупацією, і знищувати росіян, де це тільки можливо. Ці мерзоти мають горіти в пеклі, і ми маємо допомогти їм туди потрапити. Слава Україні! Героям слава! Слава нації! Смерть ворогам! Україна! Понад усе! Спротив є!
I get chills down my spine when I hear that. Now, guys, the translation is literally what they were just saying is, we are representatives of Kiev. Today we stand to protect our capital from any Russian scum that tries to come through Kiev. And if they come here, we will destroy them. Today we'll call upon all of you to take up arms and join us in fighting back against the Russians. They will burn in hell, and we'll help them get there. Glory to Ukraine and glory to the heroes. Guys, like that is, yeah, it's civilians joining the fight. And again, there's plenty of other footage we'll get to, but Jake, I know you've got a lot to say. We'll come back to you there, mate. And yeah, we'll come back to this if you want to later on.
Yeah, just a few things on that. I'm just glad to see them all wearing their masks as well.
There was one guy in the back there that was wearing his mask.
He was wearing a cloth mask. But that, I'm just really glad that they're being careful of Omicron at the same time while the Russians are about to invade them. But yeah, no, the footage of the bomb going over Kiev is just like it looks like a nice city, and you can imagine that in Brisbane or Gold Coast or wherever. It's just crazy. But I think something that I really wanted to highlight today was the fact that Putin has been in the chair for a long time, but especially over the last 20 years or so, I was reading today that the sentiment towards the old Soviet Union way of life has actually become a lot more positive, because I think that there is quite a lot of nostalgia in Russia for the old Soviet way of life, which to us just seems absolutely crazy. But as of 2019, there was a poll in Russia that showed that 70% of Russians approved of Stalin's role in history. And that's apparently a lot higher than it would have been 15, 20 years back. And Putin has really revived the old sort of Soviet style military parades and the extreme nationalistic type energy in the country. So I think it's interesting, just that fact alone, that there is some sort of a nostalgia for probably what was the worst and most atrocious regime of the 20th century. I don't think there's anything that really rivals it, and that the horror that Stalin imparted and imposed on the people of the Soviet Union, especially Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, and can I just add as well, like I'm sure that the sentiments are definitely rising, but it's not all of them, because I've seen footage which we can show as well. The Russians are actually out there protesting. There are a number of Russians out there protesting the war. So it's just like everywhere. There's definitely a rising sentiment likely, but there's also the counter sentiment as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there would have to be. I don't imagine that
The police
Russian
shut them down
people
very
would
quick.
really. Yeah, I can imagine
Yeah,
so
that
too.
yeah.
I don't imagine that the Russian people would be overly thrilled about going to war with
Mm,
NATO and
yeah.
with all of Europe and with the US, because it's not really one they're likely to win, but there's going to be a lot of collateral damage on the way. But it's just, I think it's just interesting to know that the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. That's 30 years ago. So can you imagine how many KGB members, I mean Putin, but how many
Mhm.
KGB members there would still be out there? How many admirers of the Soviet Union? We're one generation removed from that. There would be so many people out, I mean, in Russia who would be all for the Soviet Union. Now, over the last 25 years or so, I think that there's been a few significant events, and that the first one that we should probably talk about is the handing over of power from the British to the Chinese of Hong Kong that happened in 1997. And when that handing over of power happened, the British reluctantly left, saying that China, as long as you keep promise to give Hong Kong their autonomy and their sovereignty, then we're happy to leave. And the Chinese are like, oh, okay, yeah, sweet, you guys go and we'll do that for sure. 2020 rolls around and then China invade Hong Kong. So that was one thing. Another thing was obviously in 2021, we had Joe Biden pulling out of Afghanistan and then handing that over to the Taliban. Another show of weakness. We didn't do anything about Hong Kong. We didn't do anything to rectify the situation in Afghanistan. We handed over the country back to them. And now the latest domino to fall is Ukraine, and is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What's next after this? I think this is a really important question to ask, because if these actions are constantly met with apathy by the West, then what's next? And I'm not advocating for some big war, but what I'm saying is that we might be too far along right now, to the point where we could have done something a number of years ago, but we didn't do anything about it. And especially in the last few years, these things have really been bubbling over. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll probably get into this, but it just brings us back to World War II, right? And prior to World War II, exactly what was happening there. I can't remember the name of I think the Prime Minister of Britain before Churchill, just escapes me from the moment there, but he was trying to appease Hitler. And they were saying, look, yeah, you can invade this particular country here and you can have that as long as you don't go any further. And they did everything they could to appease Hitler as he continues to grow in power. And it wasn't until they went too far. And that's what I think might be happening now. Perhaps the world leaders are sitting back waiting for them to go, quote unquote, too far, where war becomes nothing but the only option. And that might be what they're trying to do here, because that's what happened in World War II. They let Hitler grow and grow and grow, take over territories and countries, and then they just let it happen. And then it got to the point where it was beyond control. And look, I don't necessarily agree with that approach. I think I agree with what you're saying there too, Jake, in terms of having, there are steps that could have been taken prior to all this sort of stuff happening that would have avoided all this, and it just hasn't been followed up by the governments around the world.
Yeah, well, I think you pretty much alluded to exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the fact that we've got all around the world, we've got the US trying to appease people. And we've got US trying to do deals with Iran. We've got them trying to do deals with China, trying to do deals with Russia to try and appease them. And I think that at some point we have to sort of sit back and say, the people of those countries, they don't have the same democratic dream as we do. They don't want to be like us. They desire power more than anything. And if you look at China, for example, they don't desire a democratic country where everybody can start a business and have ultimate freedom like we do. That's just not their aim. And if you look at their 2049 goals, it's not their aim whatsoever. The Soviet mindset and the Russian mindset is not the same as that either. These people don't want the same lifestyle that we've got.
Now,
So,
you're just referring to the people in charge, right? Just to clarify, the people in charge of China and Russia, or are you saying the actual people of China and Russia as well?
well, I mean, this is where it gets interesting, because there was an interesting book. It escapes me what it was called, but it was a lady who went and interviewed people of the Soviet Union or people who were in the Soviet Union. And basically, she interviewed one man in particular, and he had been enslaved by Stalin, and he'd been beaten half to death by one of the guards, and then he'd met the guard later on, and then the guard and him had agreed that they share the motherland, not in those words, but they share the same motherland, so they have that in common. And then when she was interviewing this man, he said that when he walks into his grandchildren's room, all he sees is foreign this, foreign that, everything's made overseas, there's nothing from the motherland. And he said he'll die a communist, and that's that. So I think that I don't think we really understand the level of nostalgia and patriotism they have in those countries towards those regimes. And it sounds crazy, but I mean, 70% of Russians thinking that Stalin's role in history was positive is an indicator that we may think that they're all, I mean, the likelihood is that many of them don't want to return to the Soviet Union. I think that's pretty obvious, but I don't think we quite understand the level of patriotism and nostalgia they have towards that period of time.
It's an interesting concept, actually. I'm just thinking through to even how this relates to the mandates and stuff like that too, and how I wonder if there was a survey taken here in Australia, how many people actually approve of everything that's been going on, whether we'd get the same sort of 70-30 split, potentially as well. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, but it's also that people ultimately, and if there's anything that the pandemic has shown us, it's that people ultimately desire safety over freedom. And then I think that the vast majority of Australians have been that way. They've wanted everybody to wear a mask, and they've wanted mandates, and maybe not the vast majority. And I think the elections will be a critical time in understanding how how much of a majority the silent majority is. But yeah, it's definitely a fascinating concept. And if you I don't know if you ever have talked to many people from China about the Chinese Communist Party or about the regime in China. Generally, they have a reverence towards Xi Jinping, and they have a reverence towards the Chinese Communist Party. I don't think that it's all they have the same sort of sentiments as us towards their national parties. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on who you talk to. I know quite a few people from there, and then obviously they're out here, and a lot of them they're actually afraid to speak out against it. And so whether they might have the same sentiments, but whether they speak out against it, because even though they're out here, their families are back there, and they're definitely not afraid of imposing things. But I do agree there'll be a lot of them over there who do agree and who would go along with it. But I do think it depends on who you talk to, and whether you're talking to them over somewhere like the internet that they can actually be picked up on, and news coming back to China and the mainland about this. But I'm aware of multiple people, let's just say the people I know of, who they're definitely not for it. But again, it's a small minority, possibly. So
I think it's an interesting discussion to be had, and obviously we don't have the answers for all of this, but I think it's just an interesting conversation. I heard Ben Shapiro talking about this exact thing this morning, and I thought I'd bring that up. But another thing that I really wanted to talk about today was Russia as an energy superpower in the world. So I think it's one of the main points here is that the fact that during Trump's presidency, he made the United States energy independent. And that was one of the greatest things that he did. So the Keystone Pipeline was something that was a huge step in making America energy independent. And when Joe Biden got into office, one of the first things that he did to appease the climate change mob was to get rid of the Keystone Pipeline. And now that means that they have to go and get cheap oil off of Russia, because another thing that Biden did was he approved the Nord Stream pipeline, which went through Germany and was the massive Russian source of gas. So now America imports 600,000 barrels a day from Russia. So it's a gigantic portion of their gas that they import from Russia, whereas just the Keystone Pipeline would have imported, or would have created 830,000 barrels a day for America. And now they've got to go and get that from Russia. So whilst it's all very noble for Joe Biden to have cancelled the Keystone Pipeline and not made all of this cheap oil, they're now getting it from somewhere else, because obviously they need the oil. So they're going to go, they need the gas, sorry. So they're going to go to Russia, and then they're going to go to Saudi Arabia for oil. So this is a really critical thing here, because now that Russia have the Nord Stream pipeline, obviously, they're an energy superpower. They supply most of Europe's, not most of Europe's energy. They supply a lot of energy to other countries around Europe. So, for example, I mentioned before that 50% of Germany's gas comes through Russia. And Germany is a huge economy. So if Russia was to turn around tomorrow and stop giving gas to Germany, then the implications on their economy would just be enormous. So what I'm trying to say here is that Russia has the ability to single-handedly almost collapse the economies of countries all around Europe and to have a huge impact on the economy of America. So as much as, it doesn't really get talked about as much, this is a gigantic problem. This is a real ace up the sleeve of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think it was also a big criticism of the Biden regime, as well as the fact that he's making the USA more dependent on foreign countries for their energy when they have more than enough themselves to look after themselves. And this is what happens. They get vulnerable to these sorts of situations, which unfortunately the US taxpayer and also all of us plebs and taxpayers over here in Australia too, we're the ones who are going to have to foot the bill for this as well, which is a real shame.
Yeah, and I'm interested to know what kind of an impact it's going to, and have you done much research on what kind of an impact it could potentially have on Australia? Because I've been looking at it from especially just because of the NATO alliance and the sort of, because that's really going to be the hot spot. That's going to be the hotbed. I mean, you've got another really important aspect of this is going to be the cyber warfare, or the different styles of warfare that Russia could impose on the Ukraine. So, for example, if they were to cut the energy in Ukraine and they were to get rid of the electricity, that would then in turn affect countries like Poland and countries like Lithuania, who actually border Ukraine, Poland for sure. And then parts of Poland would then lose energy. So Poland is a part of NATO. So I think it's Section 5 or Article 5 of the NATO alliance, which would suggest that would mean that the NATO countries would have to kick into gear, because Poland, one of the NATO countries, has been affected by what's happening in Ukraine. And then there'd also be NATO soldiers in Poland who, say, for example, they're driving their trucks and they have a car accident because the stop lights aren't working in this area of Poland. That means that's a direct action of the Russians. So there's other ways in which NATO could become more heavily involved. And just one of them is if those bordering countries are affected, because they are NATO countries.
Yeah, I think for us in Australia, we'll have knock-on effects, and I think it really comes down to what China does as well, because I was listening to Patrick Bet-David earlier on today, and he was saying that it's very interesting that China's been so quiet throughout this whole situation. Like, we haven't heard anything from China. And I think for us in Australia, if anything's going to directly impact us, it's going to come from whatever China does as a result of this. But if they don't do anything right now, I do think we'll have the knock-on effects, because the whole economy around the world is very interconnected. And so, what affects Europe will then affect the USA, which then affects us, and it's a big effect. Now, the other interesting thing as well is that Ethereum spiked in price pretty much the moment the invasion began. And interestingly enough, the markets in the early stages, at least, had shot up as a result of this, which I thought is very unusual, because I would have thought
my crypto wallet's not looking very good. So
no, okay, you mustn't have Ethereum.
I've got a bit of Ethereum. Maybe that's performing okay.
Yeah, that might be performing all right, because I know that definitely the price shot up for that pretty much the moment the invasion began. So
right.
Yeah, what I do think is it is going to do, the other impact it's going to have on us is just the uncertainty impact. It's kind of like when COVID first hit and people were really uncertain about what's going to happen. Similar to what's going to happen now, I believe, in terms of when you don't know what's happening in the immediate future, you're likely to pull back your spending. So we'll obviously probably see people pulling back on their spending a little bit, maybe thinking about or second guessing what their decisions have been and what they're likely to do in the near future. Because right now, we are just so uncertain. We have no idea what this is going to do for the future. And when that happens, people tend to freeze and just put their plans on hold. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens over here.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that one that we should really, and I keep hammering on about this, is that the China-Taiwan situation is looking more and more inevitable. Even since last night when we talked, it's looking more and more inevitable. And I don't mean it might happen this year. It might happen next year. We don't know. But the knock-on of effect of this could be China having the confidence to then invade Taiwan. And as much as militarily, that's actually a very difficult operation. That's why it hasn't happened yet. At the same time, if the whole world is distracted over here with what's happening in Eastern Europe, then there's no reason why China with being as audacious as they are, wouldn't go and do that. And if they do invade and manage to annex Taiwan, the next one on the chopping board is Japan. And we know that from the Chinese Civil War in the 20th century, Japan and China have had wars before. There is bad blood there. Japan are no fans of China, and China are no fans of Japan. We know that. So that would be the ultimate fear, that Taiwan are taken over by China, and then China move on to Japan. And then this is obviously down the line. It's very speculative, but after Japan, we're next. We would be the next domino to fall as Australians, because, you know, we would be quite easy picking for China due to our military strength.
Yeah, I also think Taiwan would be pretty easy for China, to be honest with you. But I think also that's also the point where the USA would be drawn in, because they've obviously got the promises they've been exchanging with Taiwan, that if anything does happen to Taiwan, they would step in. Do you think they'd step in when China goes for Taiwan, or do you think they'd sit back and let it happen?
I think that they'll step in. Yeah, I think that they have shown quite a bit of reluctancy and trying to appease and trying to do deals, and with these countries that they just don't care for integrity and honesty. Like the governments of China, they have one goal and one goal only. And all you have to do is do a little bit of research about their 2049 plan to make China a superpower. Historically, over the last few centuries or even thousands of years, there's been many different Chinese emperors, and at times they've been the superpower of the world. And that's the way that they see themselves, as the superpower of the world. And when they were defeated, you know, by the Mongolians, and, you know, during the 20th century when they had times where they weren't an economic superpower, that's viewed as such a great shame in China, and they view themselves as those superpowers. So I don't really think that they have as much regard for other countries as we maybe give them credit for in some places. But what was the question again?
Yeah, I don't think I do. I don't think I have any regard. I was thinking whether I was asking whether the USA would get involved once Taiwan.
Yeah, no, I do think so. I think that the USA have a really good track record of getting involved, and obviously things have changed a lot. But at the end of the day, USA are somebody who see themselves as the superpower of the world as well. So China taking Taiwan is, in terms of the chessboard that is the world, is a huge move. It's almost taking the queen in a way, because, you know, obviously that's one place in which the US has always said that they would get involved if they try and take Taiwan. And I think you were saying yesterday about the resources in Taiwan as well. Correct. And it's a big stronghold.
Yeah, 100%. If China takes Taiwan, then it's pretty much the vast majority of the I think it's the rare earth minerals, or whatever they're called. That's all the stuff that's used to create microchips, which is in all of our technology, would be in the hands of China. And I think that's a bridge too far for the USA. And yeah, definitely, I do agree with that too.
And then China's imperial powers then would move on to Japan. And like, this is not something that gets talked about, because all we hear about is Taiwan, Taiwan, Taiwan. But like I said before, China are no fans of Japan. And to have a war that they would pretty comfortably win against Japan, I don't think that would be off the table.
Yeah, well, I think what we're looking at here is a period of a lot of instability around the world, with geopolitics and obviously all the COVID situation and the authoritarian issues with the Western governments. So definitely in for a wild time ahead. What we might do, we might just, Jake, I know you got to head off shortly. We might just continue on with some more footage and stuff from the Russian situation, because there's plenty of it here. Feel free. I don't know if you need to head off now. If you want to
need to love you and leave you, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. All good. Well, what I'll do is I'll continue on, and I'll go back for some more footage from Russia, and we'll talk to you soon, mate.
All right. We'll reconvene soon.
Sounds good.
See you later. Take care, guys.
All right. For those of you who are still with me, what we're going to do is go back to Funker 530, and we're going to have a look at some more footage from the situation. Now, again, this is direct footage from the Ukraine. And again, we will be covering some stuff that is not safe for work. So if NSFW. So if you do have any issues with that, just make sure you do not watch those parts. Okay, let me just get the right parts here. So, okay, so this is footage from basically this is from prior to the invasion. This is not from the last few hours. This is from prior to the invasion. This is a whole bunch of the rockets hitting, ready for the invasion. Again, we have to get through this 5 seconds worth of ads. And here we go with the footage, guys. So you'll notice them over here on the side of the screen. Oops, hold on, let's see if it's going to keep on playing for me again. Let me get out of full screen. No, I think I know what's going on. I think it doesn't like when I've got so many tabs open. Let me just close this out. We're going to go through these one at a time, guys, because there is a lot. And again, I highly recommend if you want the latest footage and the information that's coming out of Ukraine and also just general combat footage, Funker 530 is the place to go. So let's have a look at this one here. This is actually a cruise missile hitting the airports. Again, this is yesterday. This is not from the last few hours. This is not new. This is from yesterday. Oh, it's going to do it to me again. Come on, guys. Look, what I might do is I'm going to stop this screen and I'm going to open up a new window and see how we go. Because I know Funker 530, they've been having a lot of footage coming through to them. And earlier on today when I was watching, they had the 530 error. So I think they're getting a high volume of traffic right now. Let me just come back over here and we'll try this one more time. If it doesn't work now, we'll just wrap the stream up and we'll hopefully try again later. Earlier on today, it was working just fine, even while we're on the stream as well. So let me just load up these bits of footage. And we're just going to go one at a time. And let me find that bit of footage there as well. Here we go. Okay, and let me just share the screen. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to share this particular window. The window, Funker 530. Stephen says, it appears that our site's currently under attack. We are working to mitigate it as quickly as possible. Yeah, that's thank you for that, Stephen. Yeah, 100%. Again, I think they're getting DDoS situations as well, because the other thing too, that as you've said on that comment there, mate, they are posting information about Russian casualties. They've got footage of aircraft being shot down, Russian prisoners, all those bits and pieces. I'm sure Russia doesn't want that showing out there to the public. So let's have another look at this and let's see if we can get this playing. Because again, guys, it is really important to see what's going on the ground. So that's a Russian caliber cruise missile hitting into one of the airports there in Ukraine, which is absolutely terrifying. And just how close that is to the civilians there as well. There are reports of mass civilian casualties in certain areas around Russia as well, around Ukraine. My apologies. Let's look at this footage here. Is also terrifying. I'm sure this has been doing the rounds. I'm sure you might have seen this already, but if you haven't, this is pretty much front-on footage of an airstrike on a piece of property right next to the person who's recording the video. So let's have a look at this. So you'll see the plane coming in here. And again, I don't know about you guys watching this, but just hearing that child in distress is extremely, it's terrible. It's gut-wrenching hearing that as well. What we might also look at here, this is, let's have a look at the Russian tank column. Where is that one there? There's a burnt out wrecks from the Russian column. Here we go, this one here. Again, this might get us pulled off the streams, but this is the aftermath of, let me just skip past that part there. Russian tank column that has been destroyed by the Ukrainian army in Kharkiv, apparently, according to the video here. And we've also got footage of the Ukraine military blowing up a bridge to prevent the maneuver, the movement of the Russian military as well. This is happening, I think, last night. You'll see, this is the crazy part as well. Like, this is all being captured by civilians or civilian footage. And there you'll see, I think it's a taxi that's just driving up the road there towards where the blast is going to take place. Absolutely mind-boggling. You'll be happy to know that taxi driver is okay and he actually turns around and comes back the other way. But the thing that's really fascinating for me is looking at all this sort of stuff is you think back to previous wars and things like that. Even in Afghanistan and Iraq, the level of footage and even the timeliness of that footage just wasn't really available like it is now. And you can see here on the screen here, the taxi driver, he's coming back the other way. So he is A-OK, no need to stress about that there. But look, guys, look, the footage we're seeing, this is all happening in real time. And this is happening, over the other side of the world. It's in Ukraine. While we're sitting here living our lives. And again, today here in Australia, or where I am on the Gold Coast, it's been, rainy weather. It's been quite peaceful. It seems like everyone's going around their day-to-day lives. This is normal. But again, it's hard to imagine that this is what's happening over there right now as we speak as well. And plus a lot more as well. One thing I was also going to mention about that too was, let me just think about what I was going to mention with that. Oh yeah, that's also the warfare as well. In terms of previous wars, for the most part, were conducted between countries that never really had civilians traveling, to their places. So you think about World War II, there weren't that many people who were traveling. Think about Vietnam, not many people who were from America went to Vietnam. Even with Korea and even Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that as well. So it's really interesting for me here because the Ukraine and Russia, they got such close ties. And this is, I'm sure the Russians probably consider this more of like a civil war type situation because they've got a lot of history where they believe that the Ukraine is part of Russia. It's going to be fascinating to see how this works in the future of warfare when civilians have traveled to these countries quite regularly. So even with China and Australia or China and other areas, Russia and Europe and everything, I know several people from Russia, and they're all lovely people. And I know several people from the Ukraine as well, also lovely people. And it's just, I know the more that we get to know people from around the world, I think it's just insanity that this is actually happening. What we might do, guys, before we wrap up the stream here, we're going to look at maybe a couple other pieces of content from Funko 530. And again, Stephen, thanks for the update they made about the fact that they are confirming that they are under attack from, I'm assuming, DDoS attacks, trying to bring down their sites. That's one thing as well. The Russian military capability with cyber warfare is very strong. That's definitely one of their strong points. So we can definitely expect over time a lot of this footage to slow down as well, because I've no doubt that they'll be trying to engage in electronic warfare of some sort, of trying to shut down or slow down the internet to prevent footage from escaping the war zone there. What we might look at before we wrap this up is maybe this helicopter that's been shot down, and we might also look at this aircraft that's been shot down as well from the Russian side. So this is footage of, again, apologies for the ad that's coming up. This is footage apparently of one of the Russian Ka-52 attack helicopters that's been shot down. You can see the hull with a bit of what appears to be damage there just behind the missile there. And a whole bunch of shrapnel damage up there as well. From the looks of it, the doors are open. Whether the civilians have opened the doors prior to, or whether the pilots escaped and got out, who knows? But it's absolutely fascinating to see this as well. Now, what we'll also look at here, this is footage of a Russian aircraft being shot out of the sky. Again, you'll see the parachute of a pilot. So thankfully, again, no matter what side of this you're on, surely you can't help but think that, the loss of life is not a good thing. So thankfully, in this case, at least one parachute deployed. It doesn't like when I go full screen. Hold on. I forgot that. Let me just load that up again. They might be under that attack again. Guys, what we might do, we might wrap up the stream with that right there, because again, as Stephen was saying as well, it's been confirmed that the Funko 530 site is under attack. Well, they believe they are under attack with their capabilities. Let's see if this plays. No, it's not going to play. No, so what we'll do, we'll wrap up the stream with that one, guys. I do highly recommend, if you want the latest footage and the latest updates, do go to Funko 530. They're posting a lot of it as regularly as they can. And it's also been confirmed because again, they're all veterans from the US military. So it has been confirmed by those guys as well. So we'll wrap up the stream. I'm glad you joined us. We'll be continuing to do this, especially over the next few days as well, as things develop. Again, right now, I think everyone's at the situation where we just don't know what's going to happen next. And again, the quicker we know what's going on, the quicker we can make our decisions about what we need to do for us and ourselves. And again, I don't think there's going to be massive implications for us in Australia right now, but again, there are going to be knock-on effects. One thing as well I am aware of is that the Ukraine, I believe they supply 50% of the wheat, I believe it is, to Europe and everything too. So that's obviously been frozen. Let me just have a look at this here. So the update was, so wheat prices have soared, obviously because of this whole situation. Where is the actual updates from here? So again, another person to follow for this sort of thing is the Ice Age Farmer. So they're saying wheat, here we go. Wheat prices are up sharply on Thursday because of the whole thing that's kicked off. Between them, the Ukraine and Russia account for nearly a third of the world's wheat exports. So that's crazy to think about that. They're a third, obviously Ukraine and Russia, a third of the world's wheat exports. Now, food it's been high on the agenda leading up to this as well. We've been talking about that from the global reset or the Great Reset perspective, but this is a direct warfare perspective too. And also, as of today, ports have closed in Ukraine. And so therefore, all exports of the wheat grain have ceased. So guys, just be aware of what's going on. Try to keep up to date with it so you know what the knock-on effects are going to be. And with that, we'll see you in the next stream coming up in the next within the next 24 hours. We'll see you soon.